to Informe, a social media conversation for July 31st, 2014. I'm Nate Manning.
And I'm Dustin Hickle.
Hey, today, it may be the last day in July, but things are just starting to heat up as we're talking about Bolt.
Yeah, another Snapchat competitor.
Right.
Don't worry about it. We're also going to talk about Facebook and Google+. Are they trending downwards, and are they going to end?
Then, we're going to look at 7 networking apps, and we're going to have our question of the week. We're going to ask you, which one are you using or do you want to use? All this and a lot more. Great conversation between Dustin and I on social media conversation known as Informe. Keep watching. Welcome back to Informe, a social media conversation, and well, you know, it's been a little while. We've been a little infrequent. You went on vacation. I wouldn't say I went on vacation, but I was because it was a workation. But I was gone last week.
Yeah.
We were doing some things. If you want to check it out, check out Build Momentum on Twitter, and you can see some things. You can follow me on NK Manningham, some of the things we posted, and we were doing some video production as one of the many hats that I wear. I was the project manager on doing that. Now we come back and we think social media.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's a lot of social media news.
No.
But there was one that it came out yesterday, and I was like, what in the world is that? And that's Instagram launching potentially a new product that we can't get here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, they called it Bolt. It's basically a real Snapchat competitor, which the reason that it kind of made us scratch our head is because Facebook, who owns Instagram, just released a Snapchat competitor called Slingshot.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make a lot of sense for one company to have two competitors to one other app. But yeah, taking a look here, I forget where it's at. It's in South Africa and New Zealand and
Singapore, I believe.
Singapore, yeah. So really interesting theory. It seems to be almost an exact replica of Snapchat. You don't have to send pictures back like you do on Slingshot to see the person's message. So yeah, it kind of confuses me. Why would they want to cannibalize? Why would Facebook take the risk of cannibalizing their own app?
Yeah, I have no clue. Other than that, they decide that the more platforms and maybe the moniker or the brand of Instagram has certain cachet with certain people, other than, and Facebook has some negative connotations. I don't know. That could be. Here's what it just is shocking to me is how many of these can actually succeed, and eventually they just keep adding. Everybody's trying to do something with this, and
well, there's a million WhatsApp competitors out there. You know, the texting, voice messaging, and eventually, you get to the point where it's like, how can you use all of them, and how can they all have an audience?
Because I believe that Snapchat or whatever wins this victory in this, I don't know what you call it, this area of there's a
the
fancy
market,
word.
I guess.
Yeah, whoever wins it, there's business applications, there's marketing applications, there's ways to use it. And we've talked about Taco Bell, look back a couple episodes. There's all kinds of cool things that you can do. However, there's just too many of them. I mean, as a small business owner and you're trying to dig through all the crap that's out there in the world, and especially in the social media, and trying to figure out how to get, really practical and really, just managing your time well, I'm like, just add Bolt to your Snapchat, to your Instagram, to your Pinterest, and there's too many things. And so here's what I say. Ignore Bolt for the while, and if it becomes popular, if it takes over Snapchat, we'll tell you. Just keep watching Informe.
There you go.
That's what we're here to do, and as soon as I can get my hands on it, I will play with it. I did, you were slingshotting with me last week.
Yep.
I do, I have a couple guys in the office that are constantly Snapchatting. Eventually, though, my phone is going to explode from notifications. That's, last week I was really busy. The project that I was working on, and I'd get done, 2 a.m. I'd lay down in bed and I'd look at my phone and I'd have all these notifications that I hadn't gotten
across
through
the
day.
top
And I'm just like, I don't even know what to do with these. And then I have an Android phone and I just swipe them off, get them off. I'm pretending that I don't even remember where I was, but Jordan, a local guy in here in our office, one of our teammates here, he had Snapchatted so many things and I was so far behind. And when I realized you just hold it down and it just plays Snapchat after Snapchat after Snapchat.
Oh yeah.
It was like, I don't remember.
At one point I had a minute and a half from him,
Yeah.
So he loves Snapchat.
Behind.
He's a Snapchat nut. But yeah, so Bolt, interesting. The one other thing that this article mentions that I want to touch on is that Facebook, when they bought Instagram, said they'd kind of they wouldn't integrate too much and wouldn't stop Instagram from doing what they're already doing and kind of not get too involved with Instagram.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's just kind of a disconnect. Instagram is doing its own thing, Facebook's doing its own thing. Facebook just owns Instagram and isn't doing anything to run it. So really confusing, really interesting, but maybe that's what's going down. And like you said, I think people have a better connection with Instagram.
Yeah.
They
Well,
connect better with Instagram than Facebook.
And definitely a younger, that prime audience, that 13 to 49 audience is certainly more applicable on Instagram. I watched that, what we were doing in the video in the Momentum Youth Conference. It was, high school, middle school, and high school students. And what I was fascinated by is I don't have a very highly followed Instagram account, but I posted a few, and I got, I get 10 likes by people I don't have any comment, just by tagging Momentum 2014, and I'd have all these high school students that are liking what I posted, and I posted a picture of our drone that we were using to take pictures of stuff. I think there is a avenue to use things like Instagram, and Instagram has a great brand right now. It's a good use case. So I will see. Now, as much as Instagram is growing, as much as people are using it, and maybe they're going to be using Bolt, we'll find out. Maybe I think Google Plus. We keep learning. Maybe we're just going to have to say it's not going to make it. I don't know.
Yeah.
We learned this week, or in the last few weeks, you don't have to sign into Google Plus anymore to do YouTube comments.
Yep.
This week we learned you don't have to sign into Google Plus to do Google Hangouts, which is one of my favorite platforms of Google Plus. And I actually think that's great. But we put up an article this week, top 10 things small businesses should be doing on Google Plus. Is it still relevant?
You know what? I think, and the other thing is we've been learning that Google is saying more and more that social cues aren't as relevant in their search results as they have been in the past. So, even their own social platform may not, we don't know if they're telling the truth entirely, because, that's just, the nature of it.
A little bit of secrecy.
Yeah, but, that's the hard question. The hard question is it still relevant? Are these tips still relevant for a small business? And I think if you have a really niche small business, if you're really isolated and focused into, we talk about this all the time, photography, or really cutting edge technology, 3D printing, I would guess had a pretty good, strong following and start on Google Plus because of those really high level techie sort of people who populate Google Plus. But for a small business, I don't know. I'm starting to have doubts as to whether or not that's a really relevant piece. Other than the fact that you're going to be Google local, if someone searches for a coffee shop in Warsaw, Indiana, you want to have a Google Plus local page that you've claimed your Google listing, because that helps you show up in the search results. But that's connected to Google Plus right now, but we don't know if it will continue to be that way. It didn't used to be connected to Google Plus, and now it is. So
it's just important that you appear on that map. So
you have to make sure you appear on the map.
I've been traveling the last 10 days. You travel. When I Google something, I need to know that that's going to show up in the map.
Absolutely.
What's open, those type of things. So you've got to make sure whatever Google is allowing you to do, whether it's Google Local, Google Plus, you're going to have to make sure you're engaged in taking care of your business profile page. But
that's the big piece, is making sure you show up in the search results.
Yeah. But other than that, I wouldn't. We talk about this every once in a while. It's been a few weeks, probably months, since we asked this question. Getting started, no social media. You're going to do 2 platforms. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it may change depending on what type of business you are. But most businesses, what are the 2 that they're going to need to be on first?
Starting off right now, you have to be on Facebook and Twitter. And then I'd throw Instagram in there as like a wild card third. Yeah. Just because, Facebook, generally everybody uses Facebook a little. And if you can maximize the tools that they give you, you can see a lot of success there. Twitter, it's kind of the second place. Like more and more younger people, even more and more, skewing a little bit older now. Everybody's starting to accept and embrace this whole Twitter concept. That's probably your next best bet. And Google Plus, I don't know if it's even in the top 5. You got Pinterest and Instagram that you got to go to next, and then maybe Google Plus.
It is relevant because it's Google. That's what we always say. Why should you be on Google Plus? Why should you make sure you have a profile page? Because it's Google.
Right.
Let's take this chance and jump into a discussion really about Facebook, because we were talking just a little bit earlier, and we're kind of, as we work with some of our clients here, and we navigate which ones to spend the most time on, which social media platforms to spend the most time. Facebook, for a lot of B2B brands and even B2C brands, we're saying we're lessening the amount of time, the energy that we're putting in Facebook. Why?
Facebook is making it harder and harder for a business to be seen in a user's newsfeed. That's just as simple as it gets without spending money. I'll put it that way. Without spending money, paying Facebook to show up in a user's newsfeed. And it's really starting to kind of strangle any small business or medium-sized business that used to have a really just big following that always liked and commented and shared different posts. They're seeing that decline. Now, before I get too far into that, if you do have a really engaged audience on Facebook, and they are always interacting with what you post and sharing your stories and all that, that's really good. You're probably not going to see as much of a decline as pages who used to get, like 10, 15 likes on a post. If you are Pepsi or Coca-Cola, and you get like incredible engagement on all of your posts.
If you're Pepsi and Coca-Cola, you're going to be on every platform because
you're paying too, probably.
You're paying. Your budget for marketing is obviously through the roof comparative to the person that's just starting their small mom and pop shop in a small Main Street America, and they realize that they don't have the time. So when they look at Facebook and they start spending time on it and they set up their business page, how much time should they spend on that?
It really depends on if that is the main spot where your target audience is hanging out.
Yeah.
You have to, on Facebook, you have to convince Facebook and your followers that your business and what you do is a very important part of their life.
Yeah.
The way Facebook is structured is to bring things that are most important to you and put it in front of you and your screen. So, I see posts from my mom and my dad and my grandma, and then mixed all inside that, friends from college, friends from high school, all mixed in, and then all of a sudden TaylorMade Golf pops up, and PGA Tour pops up.
Yeah.
Because I've told Facebook, and Facebook understands that those two things are incredibly relevant to me.
Yep.
So you have to become you almost have to become an important piece of that user's family in the eyes of Facebook to have that kind of success. And that's really difficult to do unless you can convince and encourage those people to interact with you consistently, constantly. Otherwise, you're not really going to show up in their feeds. Facebook wants to show people what is most important to them. So you have to be that piece that Facebook says, man, they can't live without, Rise and Roll Bakery, because they love their donuts. It's a small donut shop, Napanee, Indiana. But everybody who loves Rise and Roll Bakery comments and likes all the time, and they show up in people's newsfeed.
Yeah.
That's the hard part about Facebook. You literally have to be so relevant to somebody that it's like, man, they're part of their family. It's one of the most important things to them to be seen. And you can do that. And when you do that, it's really, really rewarding, and Facebook can be really, really powerful.
Yeah.
But if you're not seeing that sort of success and you're not getting in front of people that way, Facebook might not be the place to go. If you're only getting 10 likes or 3 likes per post, based on the number of page likes that you have, you might need to start considering, okay, should I start using Instagram? Should I start using Twitter? And spend 15 or 20 minutes, because you can't just ditch Facebook altogether. You have to narrow down the amount of time that you're using. But if you start using 10, 15 minutes a day just to make sure you get 1 or 2 posts up there that are quality content, that's the best thing you can do. You can't not be on Facebook. But if it's not working for you and you're not driving leads and you're not driving sales, you really need to sit back and reevaluate what's best for you.
Yeah. And I think it ultimately says social media is only as good as your story is. It's only as good as your product, as your content. And if you're Rise and Roll Bakery, your social media is not going to be through the roof if your donuts aren't good and your bread isn't amazing. Mm-hmm. And that is where it starts. And then you figure out which platform to use. And if you have limited resources, sometimes it's going to be Facebook, sometimes it's going to be Twitter, sometimes probably in a bakery's case not going to be LinkedIn, but maybe if you're choosing to, you want to start selling directly to corporations, I don't know.
Large quantities to corporations.
Yeah, you can start thinking through those things, but you have to make those choices. And that's where sometimes it's important to go and get consultants like Dustin and actually interact and say, let's start thinking through that process. Because you might say, okay, I've got $1,000 budget for this month. How do I spend it best?
Absolutely.
And I have 10 hours, only 10 hours. How am I going to spend 10 hours? And maybe it's going to say, I'm just going to blow up Twitter. Yeah. And I'm just going to spend all my time and I'm going to spend an hour every week just searching for whatever it is that makes most sense for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the kind of Facebook feeling like, it's starting to hurt small businesses almost more than being a benefit to small business, you really have to determine what is the most important aspect of your marketing strategy. Is your product so great that people can't live without it, or are you so witty that people can't, they just interact with everything? There's got to be a piece and a reason for everything you do, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, and this last article, really there's 2 last articles, but this article simply says, preaching is creating a divide between you and your audience, and you probably don't even know you are doing it. And it simply says, I'm going to read the intro of this post, because it says, in the post, is your ego driving your social presence, which was a previous post by Social Media Explorer. I asked how often you preach at your audience as an indicator of whether or not your ego is driving your presence. And a lot of that, I think, I like this idea that a lot of what we do is not about who we are as a company and the story as we are as a company, but it's driven by the personality of the person who's running the social media.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out how to separate that. And it's a difficult thing. And in certain cases, like I think, let's take Mark Echo as a designer. A lot of times, I like to go random.
Yeah, no,
but
fine.
a lot of times it's driven by him, Tommy Hilfiger. It's going to be driven by the character that person is. Even though it's a brand and it's publicly traded, there is still a person that's people kind of view him as back there, even though he probably never touches the Twitter or the Facebook or any of the social media things. Now, at the same time, most companies need to separate that, and there needs to be a business persona and a personal persona, and so you have the owner who has their own account, and you have the business that has their account, and you can't feel like the business is always just pushing an agenda that is the person's agenda.
Right.
And you see that so often as people become preachy or saying they need to do things or telling me that I need to do things. You just have to figure out what is driven. And I like this. What does preaching look like? It is sometimes seeing things as completely black and white.
Yep.
You can either do this or not do this, and that's how you separate it. And you got to live in the gray sometimes and allow people to think for themselves.
Absolutely. And putting out content back there. Another one is telling readers what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
And it kind of ties into the one after that, assuming that you know what's best for your audience.
Yeah.
Well, the fact of the matter is, they know what's best for them. They don't need us to tell them what to do. What they need us to do is to give them the most information possible for them to make the best decision for themselves.
Yeah.
And to do that, sometimes we feel like we need to just data dump and give them everything and say, no, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. But instead, it's sometimes more important just to literally give them, maybe it's statistics. Maybe it's, last month we sold 1,500 more donuts than usual by doing this strategy. Not saying, hey, you should do this too, but saying this is what happened for us. Yeah. Take a look at it and see if it works for you.
Right. More and more, social media, that's why we do this show, is it's changing constantly. There's more voices out there, and you have to be analyzing how your voice is working. And it will change. What worked last year, what worked last month, what even worked last week may not work today.
Yep.
And so you have to just keep analyzing it, keep thinking about it, and trying to figure out which right versus wrong for your company. And you can't keep preaching, but you also then have to figure out all the tools that you have. And this is something, our last article today, that kind of shocked me. This is a Social Media Examiner, 7 must-have social media apps for networking.
Yeah.
I don't use or know any of them.
I don't either.
And we're pretty connected in this, and I like that, because this comes to our question of the week. 1, do you use any of these? So look at this article. We're posting it right there. You can go find the link to it. You can follow our Flipboard, because we always put these on our Flipboard, and we don't say that often enough, but we have quite a few followers, and you can follow our Flipboard.
Yeah.
What I love is there's so many new tools that people are putting out there, and they're really good.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to test some of these out this week.
Absolutely.
But any of them stood out to you as you looked over these 7 must-haves?
You know what? The thing is, I don't have any experience with any of them, so I don't know what actually is going to stand out to me. But I think that obviously this one here, identify viral trends and news with TrendSpotter. It's connected to Salesforce. Really, really intelligent to be connected to Salesforce. There's lots of businesses out there using Salesforce. It helps you set up alerts for keywords, hashtags, keyword phrases that have potential to go viral, apparently. But I think that tool itself is really useful on Twitter for anybody using Twitter. If there are certain keywords and hashtags that people use that can help you connect with them and start having a conversation that may lead to a sale, or to not a sale, but just a good connection. That's a really cool tool. It's really automated. It's really useful.
I'm looking at Nimble, which I think I've heard of, but I'm not 100% sure. So you hear so many of these things. But Nimble lets you tag contents with specific keywords and stay in touch with the reminders to follow up with those leads and contacts. So it's basically being able to make sure if you are a business that has specific leads and you're trying to get people from becoming strangers to becoming champions and following maybe it's inbound marketing type strategy, a reverse funnel where you're trying to get the large down to a few clients. Nimble seems to be a place to help use that in social media. And I like their ideas. I think of Perch, which we looked at. It was a app on Android and iPhone where you can use for restaurants. So you can make sure you know what's happening against your competitors. And it sounds like that's what this is. You're connecting your current contacts. Make sure you know what's happening across the board, and you have these 15 people that they're prime and ready, and you believe in the next couple months they're going to become sales and they're going to become clients, and you want to stay up to date what's going on. Nimble seems to be one of them that does that, and that intrigued me. But all these things are all about learning to use the ones that work. And I think on some days, somewhat effective in social media. We don't even know about these things, but that's why we're always trying to look it out. And that's why there's sites like Social Media Examiner.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's really cool stuff. Tools to help you track your business reviews, tools to help you monitor conversations and connect with people who can be your biggest influencers. All kinds of really cool tools there. Check it out. But even with all these tools and with all these different strategies and not preaching at people, really what it boils down to for me almost all the time is that you're connecting with people and you're trying to interact with people. And you can't let the digital side of things really get in the way of that and muddle that up in your vision. You're trying to provide as much value to people as you can. And if they love donuts, or they love burgers, or they love your latest, blouse or whatever it is.
I love that you use the word blouse.
Well, I watched Nacho Libre not too long ago, and he said that in there. I don't know. So
that may be the first time we've ever used the word Nacho Libre right on this show. Thank you, Jack Black. We appreciate all you've done for us.
But it's all about connecting with people. Yeah, it is. It is about connecting with people and giving them something that they are going to want. In the end, if you could stand in front of 20 people and say, here's this product, and it's great, here are the features, you might love it, and you can stand behind a computer and kind of convey that same message, that's the best way to find success in social.
Well, there's all things that we're learning. We're constantly coming up with new stuff, and that's why we're here on Informe. So the question of the week, are you using any of these 7 tools? Interact with us in any way you can. You can interact with me on my Twitter, NK Manahan, at the Salcha Twitter, at Salcha. You can go to our Facebook page. You can go to any of our other Salcha stuff.
Yeah.
Find Dustin.
Find me at Dustin Hickle on Twitter. You can connect with me at the PayPro Media Twitter account. And I'm on Google+, even though it maybe not be the place to be for too long. But let's circle up there. Dustin Hickle on Google+. I'd love to help you out.
All that. And, I think that's about all.
That's it.
That's it. Nothing all that more exciting. So we thank you. Join us every week. We try to do this every week. We put out a new one. Sometimes we live stream, and if you follow us on Twitter, when we do live stream it, we're really trying to gain some interaction. If you're new to Salcha, we know that we have about 400 new clients and merchants that are right on using the Salcha platform, and maybe you're finding Informe for the first time. We sit down and record this every week, and we try to come up with the most relevant information we can come up with, just to make it simpler for you. You could spend 20 hours this week trying to figure out social media. We're going to try to do it in about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That's our goal.
It's pretty exciting. We love it.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.